Before we start, I have a quick story. It's very embarrassing and traumatic, so of course I want to share it with you. It ends with me hands and knees in a store scrubbing poo out of a carpet. Okay, at the time it's spring and my 1 and 4-year-old need some new stuff. Well, used stuff. We go to Once Upon a Child. It's a secondhand kids store and there's just rows and rows of great clothes and there's books and there's this huge wall of toys. And we're ready for this. I have a plan. I get a mini shopping cart and I'm putting clothes in it. I'm throwing stuff in. I'm holding it up to the kids. I'm like, yeah, that'll fit. Yeah, okay, that's good. In 20 minutes, we got this heaping pile of clothes. Well, the last thing, we hit up the toys before we go. It's part of the deal. Clothes first, and you can look at toys. So my 4-year-old is hunting through the toys. And my little guy, he's just playing on the floor, right? And then I smell it. Oh, I smell it. And it smells like reheated burrito vomit. And it just makes me gag. And I look down and there's my little guy. And he's just happy. He made a good poo. He's proud. Yay! You know, and he's smiling. Great job, buddy. But here's the kicker. Right? Kids are always going to poo. But this poo has exploded out of the side of his diaper. And it's like this disgusting fudge-like substance. And it's oozed all over the carpet. And it's gross. I make my move. Holding the poo-covered kid out in front of me like a battering ram. Crap's all smeared down his leg. Parents are dodging out of the way, and I'm negotiating with my oldest. I'll get you a toy if you just stick with me, buddy. We get to the car. I grab my Swiss Army backpack, aka dad diaper bag, and back into the store bathroom. The kid is cleaned up in under 2 minutes. Dad magic, boom, crushing it. But there's still poo at the back of the store. I gotta clean it up. It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. I can't be responsible for somebody stepping in poo. So the plan is be as inconspicuous as possible. I don't want anybody to see, right? Nobody really knows. I mean, it's a little pile of poo at the back of the store. It's kind of gross, but I can clean it up, kinda. So here's the deal. We're going to go check out with the clothes. And as I leave, maybe mention, hey, there was a little accident at the back. It was a good plan. Stealth mission. We had this. So there I am. I'm on my hands and knees and I'm scooping poop up with wet wipes. I'm throwing them in the diaper bag and busy moms are shopping and staff is working at the front. And then my oldest, he grabs a big purple cone thing and he uses it as a megaphone. And then with everything in his little lungs, he sings, "This is my wiener song." This is my wiener song. Echoes into the store. Moms, kids, staff, heads popping out of everywhere, all staring at me. I look back at them with shit on my hands, kids singing about his dick and my baby just clapping along. Embarrassment just takes over every cell in my body. I died a little bit. And the reason I'm telling you this story, it's not just a lesson in humility, because there's lots of it, but sometimes we can have a great plan. We feel like we're ready for anything, and shit still happens. Literally. Kids are going to embarrass you. We're going to feel stress and judgment. It's unpredictable, unforeseen things are going to happen to us as parents. This is where we get tested as role models. How do we respond to these situations? Or are we reacting because we feel out of control? Now, let's get into it.
4, 3, 2, 1.
So welcome to the Zen Dad Method Show. I am your host, Jay Zen Kalryzian. I hope you enjoyed that story. I love that story. I think it's hilarious. It's part of my past. It's part of my journey. And I've learned lessons from that. And just so that you know, I was laughing on the way out of that. It got to the point where it was so ridiculous. I had to laugh. You just get to the point where it becomes so overwhelming of a situation and you just can't do any more but just like throw your hands up in the air and laugh about it. And if that's the response that I can have in that situation, perfect. Because I mean, I go to kid events and playgrounds and all sorts of stuff all the time. And I always see parents freaking out. the littlest thing will happen, and parents are just constantly pushed to that edge of stress or of overwhelm. And that's when we react. But when you think about it, you're out of control in that situation. And you're showing your kids that that's an appropriate way to respond. I've been pushed too far and now I get to freak out, right? So that when our kids do that and we see that action in them, they get in trouble for that. Well, why are you freaking out? What's wrong with you? Why are you crying? Why are you yelling? Why are we giving them trouble for doing what we've just shown them how to do? This is what we got to think about as parents. This is what we got to think about as role models. So I like to think about, how can I respond in a way when I have a situation like that? I have a situation where I've got to clean up poo in a public place and there's all sorts of stuff going on. Well, how is the best way I can handle this? How do I create a win-win-win beneficial situation out of this chaos? How do I stay calm in it all so that my kids can learn, I can get better at what I'm doing, and whatever the situation is has some kind of improvement out of it? You know what I mean? Let's just take the example of the Poo story here, which is great. I wonder if my kid's gonna get mad one day because I'm telling the Poo story. But there are lots of parents that could have been overwhelmed easily in that situation and, yelling at their kids. They would get mad, they'd get embarrassed, they would rush out of the store, they would leave all the clothes behind, somebody would be scooping up poop in the back, pissed off. Maybe you would never go to that store again. I've gone shopping in the store many times and they still love me in there, and they know all the people in there are parents. Everybody in that store in there has kids. They all know, oh yeah, shit happens. So you have to really be able to just take a second and be like, what is going on in this situation right now? What is happening in the present moment? And how do I get some benefit out of this? Because it's all learning. You're constantly learning, and so are our kids, but our kids are always watching. And we've had these situations constantly, again and again and again, where we've got kind of a pre-set mentality. We're already wired how to handle these things. And when something is out of control, the first thing we do as a society is we look and see what everybody else is doing. If something crazy is going on, first thing we do is we look around, what's everybody doing? Everybody's freaking out. I'm going to freak out too. We can't do that. We've got to start teaching our kids, when stuff gets overwhelming and stressed out, we can take a minute, we can breathe, we can do the right things, calm down, assess the situation, and move from there. And I've learned from that situation. That was almost 4 years ago now. And I've learned so much in the last 4 years because you're constantly in those situations with kids. So where do we go from here? As we know now, we want to be present when our kids do something that's unexpected, or they're misbehaving, or we've got to deal with the poo explosion, whatever it is. And I've been doing this so much with my kids lately. Well, maybe the last 6 months, I think we've really kind of nailed it down, is when something gets overwhelming, they're fighting about something, the first thing we do, before we get any explanations, before anybody gets in trouble, we take a deep breath. Okay? Breathe. Let's just breathe. It's my automatic go-to now. Breathe. Everybody gets centered. Everybody calms down. What happened? Is everybody okay? And you start going through the questions real slow, because they're going to respond to you real slow when you do that, right? We want to build that connection. We want to build that trust, and then we want to listen. If you come in and you're freaking out, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, you're creating more of the chaos. I want the best case scenario out of all of it. And as parents, we don't always have that option. It's true. But that's kind of the goal that you're working on. And you want that goal in the distance that you're working towards, because then you get to build that roadmap as you're going, You take that step and you're like, oh, I'm a little bit closer. Oh, I'm a little bit closer. And then it starts becoming natural. And the kids start learning that that's the natural way to do things too. And it just becomes the norm for everybody. Everybody's in this process. Everybody's on this journey. But the clearer the goal that you want, well, the easier it becomes to start implementing these things. Do you understand? Are you following me? Great. So what it all boils down to is when the poo happens and you're out in public, how are you going to react or are you going to respond? How are you going to act? What are you going to do when shit hits the fan? Pretty much that's the question I guess I want to know. Because for me, I think that you have to deal with your own shit before you can deal with other people's. You've got to get your world kind of stabilized. You've got to find that balance for yourself before you can do it for others. And that means your kids. I mean, it means anyone, really. You can't tell somebody what to do if you don't know what you're doing yourself. So we're going to take that example and we're going to apply it to our children, right? They're going to look to you. They're always going to look to you for the example. They're always going to look to you for the example. How are you dealing with this stuff? How are you freaking out in the store? Now there's poo everywhere. Are you screaming at people? Like, have you made it a colossal, chaotic, frantic, embarrassing moment for everybody? Or are you doing your best you can, but maybe you don't even have the bandwidth to be able to handle that situation? And then you've got to take a look at, well, what am I doing in the rest of my life? What's going on at work? What's going on with my finances? What's going on here? How do you tidy up all those different parts of your life so that you can create that balance? And you got to be on that journey. You got to be on that journey. We're all on a journey. But what are you striving for? What is it? And is being an intentional father a part of that? Well, I mean, if you're watching this, I'm assuming that being an intentional father is part of that. Maybe you're even a mother and you're watching this. I don't know. The Zen Dad Method is for anyone. It's just a dad method that I've created. I've done the research on, and I've talked to I don't know how many parents about this stuff now. I do honestly think that there's balance, and it's in flux, and it comes in waves, and you'll get to the point where you're like, oh, everything's just so great. And then something happens and chaos comes in, and you're like, oh, I've got to readjust and I've got to adapt. And I want to make something really clear here. It's not the strongest that survive, especially when it comes to parenthood. It's the ones that can adapt. Your kids are going to constantly get you to adapt. They're going to be growing a lot faster than you're going to be growing. They're going to be in situations that are going to need you to pivot really fast. And they're teaching you. These kids are an opportunity for us to grow so much as individuals, as a culture, really. And I think that there's beauty in that. And these fluxes and this change and balance all the time, it makes you more resilient as a person. And when you can respond to those situations and you can show your kids how to do that, that's real teaching. That's leadership. Showing them how to do it, not telling them what to do. Because I honestly think that leading your kids is completely different from controlling your kids. Teach your kids how to think, not what to think. Show them appropriate ways to act in hard situations. It's going to benefit them so much than you just telling them not to do something. Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Right? So I love this stuff. This is what I feel like I've just put on this planet to do. So subscribe and listen to more of the Zen Dad Method Show. Check out zendadmethod.com. We'd love to get your feedback. We'd love to hear your comments. We'd love to connect and see how we can learn more from each other and build a community around intentional parenting. So thank you so much. I appreciate you, and good luck with your kids and dealing with your shit and dealing with their shit. So, I mean, I've got some more shit to go deal with today. But that's what it's all about, right? How do we do it with a smile? How do we go into our parenthood? How do we go into our lives with a smile? So I hope this helped, and I'll see you in the next show. Thanks. Boom! It's the Zen Dad Method Show. We're glad you're here. Dun, 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 dun. Do I need a jingle? Maybe I need a jingle. No, I don't need a jingle. I can't sing worth shit.